We made it happen. Jimmy was an incredible success. I don't know where he is. I got to find him. Gosh, I don't. Oh.
Oh yeah, George. Oh, George.
Right
George.
here. Yeah.
We did it, brother.
Yes, we
hey,
did.
Thanks to Dan. You know what? And in the ring with Dan and Benny. Hey, brother, man, hey, he's about the most cat. I just love him to death. I love you. Thanks for having me. Hey, you're the best. I'm telling you, brother. In the ring with
Dan and Benny.
Yeah.
We love you. Thank you so much.
Dan.
Mwah.
Oh yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Dan and Benny in the Ring. I'm Dan Spacciano, joined as always by the playa himself, Benny Scala. Benny, how you doing, buddy?
Well, Dan, unfortunately, just a little bit banged up.
Banged up? How'd that happen?
Well, I was at my favorite all-you-can-eat sushi place, and a very nice woman walked up to me and said, "You're the player, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she started telling me how much she enjoys Dan and Benny in the Ring and all the other shows. I was so happy. I got up to give her a hug, and unfortunately, I tripped over her walker.
Jesus. Well, no matter where we go for the rest of our lives on the podcast, Benny, we can always hang on. The very first comment we ever received was someone complimenting your appearance. So,
Who was that?
When we first downloaded or first uploaded to YouTube right after we signed on with Monty and the Pharaoh.
Yes. Yep.
Very first comment any Dan and Benny video ever received was someone oohing and on over you.
Yeah, that cost me a little bit, but
Well, we're recording this on a Tuesday. It's April 2nd. This weekend, Benny, is WrestleMania. We kind of we sort of wanted to do this. We got away from the prediction and the update shows because obviously we focus heavily on the interviews, but WrestleMania has kind of always been the starting and stopping point for us, and especially this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. I know you said you were. It's the first WrestleMania under the new ownership. They've just been killing it with some of the build. It seems like a really big, popular event. And we wanted to talk about that. And of course, as we're recording this, the big story that's been floating around on social media has been the reactions as well as the interview itself. CM Punk's appearance on the MMA podcast where he spoke for about an hour. Really one of the better interviews I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely. I was going to say, besides a Dan and Benny interview or a Monty and the Pharaoh interview, it truly one of the best ones I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's not quite to the level of like, us with say Jimmy Valiant or some of the stories George has told us through the years, but it's close, a close second.
It's close. Yeah.
CM Punk's definitely a silver medal on that one, but and I want to commend him because he could have easily trashed everybody. He could have come off as an angry, grumpy guy or bitter. And he really took the high road. He was very respectful. He kind of really set the narrative that the stories that came out during his time in AEW, the Punk camp versus the Elite camp, kind of, just his reaction and obviously what's been happening in AEW since he left. It really starts to seem more and more every day that he was right. I mean, I'm not going to say 100% he should have done what he did at the scrum, a year or so ago, but it really seems like he was right. The big point I think he hammered home, and it was one of my more appreciative quotes from him when he talked about AEW. He said, if you want to be, if you care about some chump giving you a 5-star rating in a building that's a quarter full, we're in a different business. And he said, they brought him into AEW under this guise of, we're going to be the competition. We're the alternative. And he learned real quick that nobody cared. He was there to make money, bring in ratings, sell tickets, sell pay-per-views. And he did all that and nobody cared. That wasn't the objective. And it's become more and more clear that there's entire sections of AEW's leadership that they have their core audience, and that's the only people they're ever going to care to market to.
And he was very grandiose. He said, Tony Khan, he's a nice guy, but he's just not a leader.
He's not. No, and I mean, he said it like, how many times the whole thing with Jack Perry and the scrum, the stories that when Adam Page went into business for himself and nearly ruined their first $1 million pay-per-view in company history. Punk kept saying, handle it, and they never did. I did like he kept saying the lawyer instead of mentioning her, the former head of AEW legal, who was kind of at the heart of a lot of the BS that came out of the scrum. Right. It's just, I give him a lot of credit for that. And then of course you said the same thing before with how he talked about Vince McMahon.
Yeah. I mean, very diplomatic. I thought, anyway.
No, I mean, I like his mentality of, it was one of those, basically screw him, because even if 1% of what the accusations have been thrown are true, then yeah, man's a monster. But at the same time, he also kind of commented on, that sort of like he compared it to the whole thing with Chris Benoit, where when you look at the story there of him murdering his family and all, it's like a part of him understood, like, yeah, Benoit was a really intense guy who took things to the next level. So I can't say I'm 100% shocked that he did that. And it's the same thing with Vince. He's like, I wasn't there. No one ever asked me to be involved. It's not like he did it in front of us, but at the same time, like everything I've known of him and from him all these years, nothing, I'm not 100% surprised that he was doing these things.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought he was very diplomatic and tactful in how he said it. It could have been a lot more direct. And he got his message across, though, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because the stories came out, over the last couple weeks. There's been a lot of even the Meltzer side, and Dave Meltzer's made a career these last couple of years of being the anti CM Punk reporter. That all the reports coming out of the locker room from both leadership and other wrestlers is how everyone he's been respectful, he's been great, he's been helpful. And I think back to the stories from his time at AEW. You had people like Powerhouse Hobbs and Wardlow and Jade Cargill and all these young talents that were just kind of thrown into the grinder. Like, Jade Cargill tells the story where she was booked for a hardcore match, and she went, she kind of brought up like, no one's ever shown me how to swing a chair or take a chair shot, and I'm in a match with weapons. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And Punk was the one that took her and the other girls aside and showed them chair shots and how to land and things like that. And how he worked with a lot of the young guys, and he's doing the same thing now. So it's very much that this is he and I like how in the interview he kept hitting on, he didn't want to peel the curtain, like it's still real to me. There's certain things about the business that he didn't want to expose and he didn't want to deal with. But it wasn't that he wanted to be a mentor. He wanted these people to succeed because he wants the business to keep succeeding. Like he really clearly, genuinely came off as someone who truly cares about wrestling, like we did. When you talk about the territories where it was a business, he even mentioned in the interview where and we've talked about it. How many guests have we had on the show that have said the same thing, that guaranteed money was the death of a lot of wrestling.
And one of the things that he said that I really liked was that he said that, coming back to the WWE, he's got people that he can ask questions to that, he's not, although he's got many years in the business, he doesn't know everything. And there's like a Shawn Michaels or, you call him Triple H still,
right? That
he can still draw on their knowledge and experience. And I like that. He's not a know-it-all.
Yeah. Well, and too, like when he talked about, Liv Morgan crawling on her hands and knees, helping him find his earbuds on the plane. Yeah. Like, how Bailey, I did like how he apologized. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm throwing you under the bus here. But Bailey was the one that organized him when the appearance last year when he showed up backstage at Raw to kind of talk to people. And then they said that Vince apparently wasn't even in the building. He was on like teleconference, and he caught wind that Punk was there and told them to get rid of him.
Get him out, God damn it.
He talked to Triple H, and he threw out, Bailey, but how like a lot of the young, and you saw that when he was in NXT, when he was down in Florida, or not in NXT, but when he was working down in Florida, when he was at the Performance Center and all that, a lot of the NXT talent were posting stories about like just wanting to pick his brain and talk to him. And, it's got to be refreshing for him. Cause I mean, think about it. We talked about it before with the interview that Jack Perry did, where he called out Billy Gunn specifically as a grouch, because he's like, we go out and we do our match and Billy Gunn's the first one in the back, like, damn it, how many Canadian destroyers are you going to kick out of? And, Jack Perry's telling this story like Billy Gunn wants it to look believable, and he's painting him as the villain. Like, why am I going to listen to that old stooge? I want to kick out of, being powerbombed through 2 flaming tables because it's a cool looking spot.
Yeah.
And, Hangman Page, where he talked about, I don't have to listen to anybody in the back. Like, imagine you're a young talent and you walk into this was a couple years ago, you go into the AW locker room and you've got, Arn Anderson and Sting and Jerry Lynn and Dean Malenko and, Billy Gunn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ric Flair at one point. And, you've got just Ricky Steamboat was in and out of there. All this, the hundreds and hundreds of years of experience, some of the greatest talents of the last couple decades, and Tully Blanchard, and you look at him and go, nah, I'm good. Me and my friends have this shit figured out.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, you have a treasure trove, literally Encyclopedia Britannica of wrestling knowledge. Like you said, hundreds of years, close to 1,000 maybe, and not just marginal guys. You're talking Hall of Famers,
right?
Championship guys. I mean, that you're not, more than they do.
Well, and think about it. Some of the people we've talked to on the show, some of the guests we've interviewed, where they've when they get brought into the first territory, or they're the young kid coming up. And this literally, like, I just sat in the back of the rental car, or I offered to drive, and all I did was just listen. 6 hours. We're driving 8 hours from Chicago, or 8 hours to Memphis, or whatever. And it's like, just pick their brain. Like, all I want to do is hear stories and advice. And the story of Lou Thez, multi-time champion, well into his 50s. Like, Lou Thez still sitting at the curtain watching people, like, taking notes. And that's the kind of guy, like, it came off, like, to me, Punk came off as that, like you said, the elder statesman who understands his role, but also is still willing to learn and open, and
still a student of the game.
Yeah. And he even said it when he talked about, if you had asked me 10 years ago to commentate or host WrestleMania, I would have blown you off because it's beneath me. And now, here I am now, and it's like, you grow as a person, you learn things. And he even said, like, when he was talking to Triple H, or I do like too how he said, I refuse to call him Paul, like, I still call him Hunter, where he's like, we went over a lot of stuff, like, there was beefs we had 10 years ago, and it's like, okay, that was stupid, we were both childish, like, why do we even care? No, okay, moving on. And I did see a story the other day, because him and Seth, there's I don't want to say legitimate, but Seth Rollins does have less than entirely positive thoughts on Punk. Like, there's legitimate issue there. But they said when the two of them were working on their angles in the back, perfectly 100% respectful, professional. And Punk said it. He's like, how many times have guys gotten fist fights, black eye, cold cocked each other, and then 10 minutes later they're out there making, drawing the house.
Right.
How many people? I mean, we've had guys on the show that have talked about that, where, you look at your Hogan Savage at WrestleMania 5, which was at the time the biggest pay-per-view in history. Those two guys hated each other. Some of the guys in Memphis that worked with Lawler, or Jimmy Valiant talked about it in some of the tag matches, the early NWA days, and some of the, there was butting of heads in the locker room. But when the curtains were up, you went out there and you made money, because if you didn't, if you didn't draw a house, you didn't make money.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's what, and Punk mentioned that when he said, if guys got paid on the house, they'd be acting a lot different. But I mean, you got, like he said, there's guys in AEW, the house, a 15,000 seat stadium, they sell 3,000 to 4,000 tickets, and they're out there talking like they're there to bomb. It's like, you guys can't sell a third of a stadium, like, or a third of a building, and maybe not even stadium at this point, The WWE has sold out Raw and SmackDown for what, almost 3 months straight now. They
I
said
think they're 13 consecutive now.
yeah. So and even AEW brings in mega like Boston or we're gonna have this big debut. It's a huge event, and 9,000 out of 13,000. Like you can't even sell out pay-per-views anymore.
Right. Yeah, last night was a big crowd in Brooklyn.
Yeah, you saw that, and I mean the reactions they're getting, The Rock and Roman and Cody. What is it? They've already announced, obviously SmackDown this Friday's sold out. Like they were talking about that. But yeah, like you said, it's 13. I think it's 13, 12, 13, 14 weeks now consecutive. They've sold out Raws and SmackDown. So crazy.
Nice sized venues.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking 13, 14, 15,000. I liked, I mean, too, I think it's interesting to touch on because, like you said, he could have easily come off as bitter. He could have come off as angry. He came off as very professional, very polite. He talked about the good stuff. I did like, and I think it was telling that he said, despite all of it, he still is glad that he had his AEW run because he got to work with Sting. He got to work with Samoa Joe and he already knew, but he bonded with like FTR, and he talked about Danhausen and Darby Allin and guys like that. Which I did like too, how he kept kind of being careful about who he name dropped, because he is genuinely, he's worried that any of his, if he name drops the wrong person, they're going to suffer in the backstage because they're still friends with him.
But he made this statement, which I really liked. He said, I was never there to make friends, or I'm never anywhere to make friends.
Right.
I'm never make money. But it seems like the people that I make money with, I become friends with.
Yeah, which is great. And that's the best way to do it. And I remember that was, I watched an interview with Scott Hall years ago when he talked about jumping ship to WCW. And he said, there's two things you can make in the wrestling business. You can make friends or you can make money. And he said, I told Vince, I'm like, I already have enough friends. I'm going to go make some money.
Right, exactly.
And, him and Kevin Nash jumped ship. But I kind of want to touch on, too, something he said I really liked when he was talking about the narrative and working, and, especially with he was talking about the AW side. Excuse me. He touched on like the story with Jack Perry, and he talked about Adam Page. And I mean, clearly the fact that Jack Perry hasn't been back on TV yet, there was a story in the Wrestling Observer a couple weeks ago. I think it was about a week or two ago, where Tony Khan's been holding Jack Perry to the fire, like kind of keeping him at arm's length because he still blames him for costing him CM Punk. And Jack Perry kind of tried to dispute that, but it certainly seems like they're in no hurry to bring him back to AEW TV.
Yeah.
But he dropped a line, and it goes to, you and I talked about this, and I know we've had it on the 30 as well, and we've had it on some of the side shows. The brawl out, the incident with the big fight at All Out, the media scrum, his melee in the locker room. He said, there was a lot of stuff he couldn't. He even to the point where he's like, I'm not 100% sure if that's covered by the NDA, because what was it? They asked him about his dog, like about Larry's involved, like. Because his dog Larry was in the locker room, and he's like, I can't. I'm not even sure if I can tell you that story.
Yeah, very guarded.
He very casually mentioned it. It's the same thing I've been saying is, he got paid off, and he signed an NDA, and he said I didn't sign an NDA to keep my mouth shut on anything I did. You don't give him a big check and make him sign something and promise not to talk about what happened if you decide that it's his fault.
Right, exactly.
The fact that he has an NDA, and the fact that he's very careful about what he can and can't say because of that NDA, and then he got the big contract and he got the Saturday, they basically gave him everything they could to keep him happy, and just promise not to say anything. You don't do that if it's his fault. That's his fault.
Right.
Everybody's out there telling this. It's kind of like the joke with when they talk about like politics or politicians, and they're like, they stopped talking about this politician isn't talking about the policy anymore. That's how it's working, or that's how it's failing, or whatever. And it's the same thing. Like the fact that AEW didn't talk about the scrum is all the evidence you need that it was AEW's fault.
Right. And I was very surprised to find out that he did not have a no compete clause.
Yeah, which because he's even said when they fired him with the whole thing with cause, and I did like how he just kind of laughed it off when they asked him about Tony Khan saying, I feared for my life, and he was basically dude's a wuss, and he's like, yeah, everybody's like, I'm in the back. What do you say? I'm in the back, Jason Voorhees, chasing people around, like, I'm going to kill you. And
Right.
it's like, and he was very polite about it, but he pretty much said the same thing, that was Tony Khan. He's not a man, when you're a spoiled billionaire's son, you don't get told no very often.
Right.
And he didn't. CM Punk confronted him about the shit show bad job he's doing, and he didn't know how to handle it.
And he kept saying it, Tony, handle it before I do, and you're not going to like the way I handle it.
And yeah, that's very true. But yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, because he covered a lot. He talked about the commentary in the UFC. When you say the no compete clause, I thought it was interesting where he could have easily gone in the day of, even joking that Nick Khan had told him, damn, I wish I had known that before. We would have signed you, because he told the story. He signed his contract on Tuesday, and Monday they had the big call. Tuesday he signed the initial contract. And Friday he was on the plane to show up. Like, he signed his contract Tuesday, Wednesday, he said, and Saturday night he was on TV.
Ink wasn't even dry. Yep, it was very quick.
Which I think is great too, where he talked about, how many, because it was so quick and so, kind of through the hush hush door, how there was a lot of people that didn't even know. And I know one of the people who, like, because she was very, they've been friends for a while through his wife, but like Bailey, when Bailey tells the story, when she heard that he was there, she like basically was pushing people out of the way to get to Gorilla to watch him walk out, And I think it's crazy that, it shows that he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He was brought in to sell tickets, sell merch, pay-per-view buys, and ratings, and he did all of that. And he's gone. And you look, this last Dynamite, the one that aired last week, was the lowest rated of the lowest rated Wednesday night since 2021, and the lowest rated key demo since 2020. 700,000 average. They're having main events in the 600s now, because they're losing 200,000 to 300,000 people per show. I mean, it breaks down that he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Right.
And it was very obvious. It's sad to think that there were people in charge in AEW who they didn't want to make money. They started a wrestling company with the objective of, I just want to go on TV and have fun with my friends and my buddies, and we're going to work matches and win title, and we're just going to do what we want to do. Fuck everyone else. And Punk came in and was the biggest star the company's ever had, and made money. It's like, well, what are you doing? We don't do that here. Like, we're not here to sell tickets. We're here to get my, which we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the Darby Allin promo in the build up to the Sting match, where he said he was arguing with the Bucks, and he said, I was sitting in catering at the first Dynamite, and Brandon Cutler had a match, and he basically called him out. They called it All Friends Wrestling. Like, Punk made it very clear that as soon as he started being the star, the company, the big star, that everyone was like, oh, whoa, time out. That's not the goal here.
Right. A lot of resentment.
Yeah. And that's the stories when he, all the false stories that got spread was, a deliberate attempt by, I mean, you have to assume it was the Bucks. They never actually confirmed it, but their entire objective was to minimize his drawing power. Like, you are willing to cost your own company money because you're mad that you're not the biggest star in your own show.
Yeah.
Crazy. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't imagine, and not just wrestling, like anything. Imagine starting a business and then I would rather see my company go out of business than see someone be more successful inside my company than I am.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a hobby, go fly a model rocket or something like that. Don't.
Yeah, well, what are those the slot cars? Or
get the race sea monkeys. I mean, come on.
Race sea monkeys. Yeah, something like that. But I don't know. Well, he hyped big time that interview, which was great stuff. Anybody, it's on YouTube. I can't recommend it enough. for people out there to watch it. I sent you earlier today. I sent you the link as you and I were talking about it. Excuse me. It's
it's an hour and 50 minutes, but it didn't seem like an hour and 50 minutes. It went pretty quick.
It does go by quick, and they cover it. It's kind of like what we always said when we started the show. What we went for was we wanted to sound. We didn't want to interview. We wanted to sound like a conversation. Some guys sitting. It could have that interview could have easily been, Punk and his guy. They could have just been sitting there having a beer bullshitting.
Right. Exactly. That's kind of
MMA fighting on SBN. It's on YouTube. You find it. CM Punk exclusive. It's definitely it's from the show The MMA Hour, but it shoots on everything. Also, that show, it gets lost in the fray. That's a multi-hour broadcast. Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley, both also appeared on the show, among others. So it was a great time. But
yeah,
we look at Mania you've got coming up, and we don't want to. We're going to be on a prediction twice this week. We're going to be talking predictions, so we don't want to get too deep into everything. But they did confirm and announce the schedule for Mania, not the match order, but just what's going on what night. And have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, for those that haven't, obviously Mania 2 nights. It is a little one-sided, I've noticed, as far as match type. So I'm curious to see what happens, because on Saturday they confirmed the women's title match, women's world championship, Rhea and Becky, the Intercontinental title match between Gunther and Sami Zayn, the brothers match, Jay versus Jimmy, the ladder match for the tag titles, the 6-pack ladder match, 12 men. The 6-person match, which got confirmed earlier this week or last week on SmackDown, excuse me, which was Damage Control, Dakota Kai, Asuka, and Kairi Sane against Bianca Belair, Naomi, and the debuting, she was at the Rumble, but debuting as a singles star, Jade Cargill, who, I mean, again, as the old saying goes, when she was in AEW, she was greener than a pepper tree. But she definitely she just looks like a star.
Oh, yeah.
She's got that Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair. She can just stand there next to other women and she just looks like a star. So hopefully they do better with her than AEW did. Because good, bad, or indifferent, some of the matches that she had in AEW were almost painful to get through. And, but I wish nothing but the best for her. And I'm really looking forward to this match because Naomi, Bianca, Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Dakota. I mean, you're talking. This are probably 5 or 6 of the best women you have in the locker room. I mean, Asuka is obviously pound for pound one of the best female talents they have. So is Kairi Sane. Jade Cargill's a star. This is one of those hide or weakness tag matches. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I agree.
Yeah, they confirmed also for Saturday the tag match that was made last week, Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee, the newest member of the LWO, against Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. So continuing the Rey versus Dominic storyline at Mania. So this will be match 2. We'll see how this goes. I think it's interesting here, and I don't know how much of this you've been following, but they're using Dominic kind of doing his own thing here with it's sort of fracturing the Judgment Day a little bit. Like, why did you not, clear this with me? I didn't know you were going to go out there and start this fight. So, it's interesting to see how that goes. And then, of course, the main event Saturday night, they've been hyping it as the biggest tag match in WrestleMania history. The Rock and Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, which this is a match I'm definitely looking forward to. Obviously, everybody is. I mean, it's probably going to be the biggest match of the weekend. But also because this feud has been really one-sided when it's gotten physical, especially after last night's Raw. The Rock and Roman have really come out on top of everything. It hasn't even been close. Cody's been bloodied, beaten. Seth's been beaten. It's one of those.
Probably when that happens, though, you expect the babyface to go over.
You do.
They're sure this time.
But you know what? I know we said we wouldn't get into predictions, but this one, I'm calling my prediction for this one, and you can't steal this for the next show we're on. But The Rock and Roman are winning this match. And
Oh,
I think it's
absolutely.
gonna end up with The Rock pinning Cody is how I think this match is gonna end.
We're in total agreement. There's no doubt about that. To me, that is the easiest match of all of them to predict.
Yeah. And I think this leads into the next night, which we'll get to, but you have to really, the only way this story continues, whether Cody wins or loses on Sunday, is irrelevant to The Rock pinning Cody is the only logical course I think this story goes down. Because
Right.
if The Rock eats the pin, it makes no sense. You're not going to pin Roman before the main event, right? And really, Seth is, I hate to say it, he's kind of an in-between afterthought because he's got Drew McIntyre over his shoulder.
Right.
So, really The Rock pinning Cody to me is the only way this match ends.
Yeah, and I mean, it just adds to the, now Cody's really the underdog. Not only does he have to fight under bloodline rules, he's already taken a pin.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, when they talk about the bloodline rules, now he's got to worry about The Rock, who just beat him. It's not even that he's taken the pin. It's that one of the people that are going to interfere in his match with Roman just beat him up the last night.
Right.
Bloodied him with the Mama Rhodes belt.
I really think that with wrestling, nothing is ever wasted. So The Rock has whispered in Cody's ear several times. I think we're going to see on Sunday, or maybe on Monday, what he actually whispered. There's more to it. I think like all these promos have been analyzed more than the Zapruder films. What's the one with the Kennedy assassination?
Yeah, the Zapruder film. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even like to the point where the each guy's placement in the ring. The Rock is always to the far left.
Yeah.
Different from anybody.
And how everybody's obsessed with the fact that when The Rock does the acknowledge, he doesn't tuck his thumb, so he holds up an L instead of a finger.
But the last one on Monday night, Solo Sikoa actually was halfway between the rest of the bloodline and The Rock. So I mean, can you read into that?
Yeah. Which, by the way, phenomenal talent as far as in ring, and his moves and his offense looks believable, and he's got the facials. I wouldn't let Solo Sikoa cut too many of his own promos, because when you're in the ring with The Rock and Roman and Paul Heyman and Jimmy Uso, like, you've got four people that can, especially The Rock and Paul Heyman, that can talk their lives off. And yeah, he kind of like, ooh, maybe just stick to being the quiet muscle for now,
Right. That's your best bet.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really interesting. And now the story that I'm hearing, because when The Rock whispered to Cody, they asked Cody what The Rock said, and Cody said he made a promise he can't keep. The story is that what The Rock whispered to him is, something along the lines of, before you're going to be bleeding before the end of the night. Which he was when The Rock beat him up outside the production truck. Which, again, you talk about conspiracies. They had the production truck framed in such a way. There's John Cena and Steve Austin's face.
Another thing that that couldn't have been there just by accident.
Yeah, I've seen. It's funny because people are posting pictures of like Raw and SmackDown, and all the production trucks outside the arenas. And no one can find that specific truck. Like, there's Roman and Becky and Drew and Punk and Seth. That truck was empty. If you look at the trucks, they're covered in faces and symbols. That truck was empty. Cena on one side, Austin on the other. And yeah, if it was unintentional, then that was, you couldn't accidentally make a shot that good.
No way is that by accident.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It reminded me of, I don't know if we talked about it before, but it cracks me up, with going back to what Punk was saying, where he was kind of the adult in the room full of children. There was an episode of Dynamite where they did an angle where Kenny Omega was attacked backstage, and they were building up this feud, and the Young Bucks went out there and there was a fight, and somebody had stacked cardboard, and it looked really sloppy, like kind of taped together, almost like a child's fort, They had stacked cardboard, and they covered CM Punk's face on the production truck in the background.
Oh, jeez.
And it was only him. Like, it was really obvious and terrible looking.
Right.
And that's when I saw that. It reminded me, I was like, that's somebody going, we have to know what's in the background. Which, by the way, something else, and I cannot give enough credit to when Kevin Dunn retired or stepped away or walked off in shame, went to go finally get his teeth fixed, whatever he left to go do, that the bucktooth little bastard. You know, he took his bullshit with him, his quick cuts, his Michael Bay edit bullshit with him, and they brought in producers. Their new head of production is a former ESPN sports guy, and you can tell how much better the program looks. Like when The Rock came out and the camera's behind him, and you know the fade cuts, and they're not using the hard cam as much. It has very much a UFC old school boxing sports feel. It doesn't. Kevin Dunn wanted to make everything look like an action movie, and that doesn't work with wrestling. Wrestling has to look like a sport, and they've done so much better. And it's been highlighted week after week with this Rock and Cody and Roman Reigns stuff, because they're having these big grandiose shots. And that's more and more makes me think some of these backgrounds, some of this framing, it has to be deliberate, because the camera work and the direction has been too good for too long for some of these shots to be accidental.
And I will totally agree, because I have to say that, I'm not a huge fan of the current product, but I am really looking forward to this weekend, more so than I have been for a WrestleMania in years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've hit it out of the park. Like we just went over that list. This just Saturday. We haven't even gotten to Sunday's card yet. The women's title match, Becky and Rhea, gold. That'll probably that's a good chance that's match of the night, because that's two of the best talents they have, period, man or woman. Gunther and Sami Zayn. I kind of like what they're doing with the Chad Gable playing the Sami Zayn doing the Rocky. I got to beat the big foreign menace. My personal thoughts. I like Sami Zayn. I have no ill will towards him, but it doesn't feel like he's. I don't want to say deserved, if that makes any sense, but it doesn't feel like he's deserved the right to be the one to beat Gunther.
I don't think I can't get invested in him, and man, I hopefully Sylvester Stallone got royalties from what happened on Monday night, because man, if that wasn't a Rocky ripoff.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, Mania's in Philadelphia. Of course, they got to do the Rocky thing.
Man, I'm afraid. For the first time in my life, I'm afraid.
Yeah, of course. It's funny though, because it really seems like I like the Bloodline stuff when Sammy was in the Bloodline and the build up and the split, and then him and Owens main event last year for the tag titles. That was great and compelling stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, me, Benny. I'm the very first person to complain about comedy and junk in wrestling. 2 years ago, Sammy had a match at Mania against Johnny Knoxville, the whole Jackass match.
Right.
I don't know whether I'm ashamed to admit this or not, but I have not had. That is one of the most fun matches. As far as just me being entertained. Maybe it's because I'm in my 40s. I'm the crowd that I don't want to say that grew up with Jackass, but when Jackass came out, it was for people my age.
Right. Exactly.
And then the whole thing with Wee Man coming out, the body slam, and watching Johnny Knoxville struggle to have the fake mousetrap work. It was exactly what it needed to be. It was one of those moments, kind of every once in a while you can squeeze in a little comedy or a little silliness, and it works perfectly. It wasn't RoboCop, it wasn't Shockmaster, it wasn't gobbledygooker or the ding dongs. It was exactly what it needed to be. It was great stuff. I can respect Sammy, but he kind of fell off after the split with Kevin Owens. He really just, I don't know, just nothing about his current run makes me think this is the guy that needs to beat Gunther. If you've hit the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in history, you have to give it to someone who you're going to strap the rocket to. And if Sammy beats Gunther, he's not going to be main eventing pay-per-views, you have to put the belt like they did with the Warrior when the Warrior beat the Honky Tonk Man. They strapped the rocket to him, and he was the next big thing. That's what you have to do with the Gunther feud. And I don't think they're going to do it with Sami Zayn, so it kind of feels like a waste.
No, I don't really particularly have a problem with Sami Zayn being the Intercontinental Champion, but I do have a huge problem with him defeating Gunther for it. I mean,
Right.
This is like, to me, one of the best heels in the last 25 years, if
Yeah,
not the best heel. I mean, you
and
got to
good.
bring. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Sami Zayn now. I mean, if they bring in Braun Breaker and they make some kind of program, because I have to think that after Gunther is done with the IC title, he's got to move into the world title picture. He deserves
Yeah, absolutely. It really seemed to me that Gunther was going to be the first, like he was going to lose the IC title and then he was going to transition over to challenge Cody or Seth or whoever had the belt. But now there's a legit chance, because McIntyre could beat Rollins and heaven forbid Reigns, because they keep hinting time and time again, if Roman Reigns keeps the belt until I believe it's September 18th, he'll break Hogan's record and then he'll be second. I mean, they're not going to keep the belt on him for another 6 years or 4 years or whatever to beat Bruno, but he can beat Hogan's record. So, I mean, there's a legit chance, what are you going to take the belt off Gunther and then have 2 heel champions for him to go after? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not.
So there's a lot going for it. So it should be interesting. What else we got? The brothers match, Jimmy and Jay. I mean, that I think has potential for being fun, but also has potential for being the biggest indie match. That's one of those, that match is going to have probably over under 45 to 50 super kicks. You're going to have some ludicrous DDTs, a couple of near falls. There's great chemistry there. And of course, obviously the storyline has been built phenomenally. Jay is clearly the breakout face of the group. Jimmy's kind of still the henchman. But even though that's the match I'm looking forward to really the least of everything, and it's still going to be a great match. Like, your weakest is still better than some of the stuff on other shows. The 6-pack ladder match, which now they've got all 12 teams in there. All 12 men, 6 teams. You got Judgment Day, Awesome Truth, which is the Miz and R-Truth, DIY, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, who are both phenomenal talents. The New Day and Kofi and Xavier, those guys. I mean, the fact that Kofi can still go at his high level all these years later is impressive. New Catch Republic, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate, great talent. Tyler Bate, really, and the fact that Tyler Bate's still only in his 20s, like, that guy's got a future. And then your buddies there, A-Town Down Under, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. I know that's your favorite, so
that's my pick. Without getting into spoilers,
right?
I really do like DIY, and I think they've more than paid their dues. I think they're phenomenal in the ring. I would like to see something happen with them as well.
No, they're great, and you can tell that things have changed because the fact that there's tag team wrestling that's been focused so much over the last, I say year, give or take, because Vince McMahon was very open about how much, especially in the later years, how much he hated tag team wrestling, which, me, Benny, that's always been my favorite. I'm a tag.
That's what I grew up with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a tag team title guy from the beginning, always have been, tag team man. And, to see, I mean, look at that right there. That's 12 teams, or 12. I did it again. 12 men, 6 teams. Any one of those teams is a believable tag team champion. And in order to get there, you look at some of the teams they beat, because they had their qualifying challenge matches. You've got teams. I mean, I'm drawing a blank on his name now. Not the injured Viking, not Ivar.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. When he comes back, the Viking Raiders, they're a believable team. The Creed brothers, they're believable.
Very good team, yeah.
I it's a shame what they've done with Indus Sher. Those guys had a good look, and obviously, Jinder Mahal's a great talker. But excuse me. It's just, there's a lot of believable talent. It reminded me of there was a 20-man, 10-team Survivor Series match early on in the Survivor Series. Actually, funny enough, the Hart Foundation and the Rockers were on the same team. Only time in history that Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have been tag team partners. But you look at that match, you had the Hart Foundation, you had the Rockers, you had, who was it? You had Demolition. You had the Barbarian and the Powers of Pain. You had the Killer Bees. There was a lot of teams in there, and it's like right there. That was 20 men, 10 teams. At least 7 or 8 of them were believable possible champions.
Sure.
The fact that I love watching them. I cannot stress enough. I love watching them build up the tag team division again, which is great stuff.
Yeah, it's like when we talk about old school wrestling and like what did we love from the past that is non-existent, and when we've talked to our friend George Shire, and that's been always one of the things that came up, the lack of focus on tag team wrestling. So to have that again, I think it's phenomenal.
Oh no, it's great stuff. It's absolutely great. And then of course we talked about the 6-woman match, Bianca, Naomi, and Jade against Damage Control. That's going to be Jade Cargill's big WrestleMania premiere. She had a great showing at the Rumble, so the crowd can get behind her. So I mean, that's going to be great. I mean, you've got some great talent. You don't have to focus on her too much. She can be the hot tag. Speaking of tags, Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee against Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. Escobar and Dragon Lee are really the future of lucha in the WWE, and really, I would say mainstream America. They're going to be big stars. Rey Mysterio, the fact that he's still one of the best in the world, and he's well beyond the years of someone who should be moving like he does. Right. That's just every time I see him in the ring, it's just awe-inspiring. And I give Dominic Mysterio credit. He has come along so far from the smiling little kid he was a year and a half ago. Yeah, that should be a great match.
Absolutely.
And then of course, I mean, we already talked about the tag match. You and I agree on how that's going to end. That's big stuff. So so you've got this great right there, huge pay-per-view. That's just one day. Then we go to Sunday. You've got World Heavyweight Championship match between Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. That's going to be great. Drew McIntyre's been doing some of the best work of his career.
Oh yeah.
Heel Drew McIntyre has been absolute gold every second he's on TV.
And the interaction that he had with Punk and Seth, I thought was epic on Monday night.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. And it's the things like when he sat down on the announce table and the camera kind of panned around and he was like, "Don't look up my kilt, pervert."
Right.
You could, that line wasn't scripted. Like you can tell that there's those little, I don't want to say it sounds real, but you can tell that it's him saying what he means, and it doesn't sound like he's reciting a script.
Well, and I bleeped it out, but I think Punk called him a couple of dipshits, and then he goes, "PG, brother."
Yeah, they definitely bleeped out dipshit, and you could tell Drew when Punk implied, he tried to get him to say Vince McMahon, and Drew kind of shook his head like, "Damn, I walked right into that one."
Yes.
Great stuff. Okay, we've got the other women's title match, Io Sky and Bayley. That's going to be huge because this is, Bayley's been a heel for so long. This is going to be her big crowning face moment. I personally think whether it's just hinted at, maybe in attire, or whether she does the full-blown entrance, but I think she comes out with face Bayley. I would be shocked. I would not be surprised if she comes out with the wacky flailing tube men again.
You mean the gas station blow-ups?
Yeah, the what were they called? The Bailey Buddies.
Yeah,
the wacky flailing inflatable arm flailing tube men. And that's going to be, and Io Sky's a great worker. That's going to be great stuff.
Really good match.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course the crowd's going to be on because Bailey is just super over right now, and especially it's up north, and then they've got the triple threat for the United States title: Logan Paul, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens. Randy Orton and Kevin Owens, two of the biggest faces in the company. Logan Paul is the defining image of a celebrity that put the work in. I almost sounds cliche, but he has no business being as good as a worker as he is.
No.
And really, he has not had a bad match.
You on paper, you'd look at, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, thinking there's no way Logan Paul's going to retain.
Right.
I think it's very believable that he will retain.
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially, I mean, you've got the big contract with Prime Energy. They've got something kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. CM Punk, he dropped that they have several PLEs planned for this year between now and the summer. He said when he's slated to come back, that they haven't even announced yet. So there's a legit chance they sneak a Saudi show in there or something Logan Paul needs to be champion for, or at least still in the title picture.
Yes, agree.
And that's going to be great stuff. I will say, spoiler, if either Orton or Owens wins, whichever one of them doesn't turns heel eventually. I think that would be my prediction for that match. If you put the belt on Orton, Owens turns heel and vice versa, because it's good stuff. But I think you lay the foundation for that.
Okay.
And then you've got the grudge match, LA Knight versus AJ Styles. This is the two really over good workers that we have nothing for, so they hate each other. Every Mania has that one match where it's like, hey, you guys, we don't have anything for either of you, so you're wrestling each other. But
how did that happen though, Dan, with LA Knight? Because I mean, they talk about having a rocket strapped on you. That's what I thought with him. At first, I thought he was gonna face Roman at WrestleMania. Then I thought at the very least he gets a title match for either U.S. or Intercontinental. Now he's wrestling.
I mean, he had the world title shot. The crowd was over for, but I think LA Knight, unfortunately, he kind of fell into that, Daniel Bryan from 10 years ago, where LA Knight is the one the crowd wanted, but he wasn't in the plans. But they weren't going to bury him, so they just kind of pushed him slowly aside. But they kept him, and AJ Styles. I mean, that's going to be a great match. He's a big name. LA Knight could easily come out a week or two after Mania and be like, I beat AJ Styles and I never got my rematch, and he's immediately back in the title picture. Like, There's a lot they could do with this. And I think it's great. And you know what? I said it, Mania always has that one or two throwaway matches. I remember a couple years ago, probably longer than that, maybe 10 years ago now, there was a match between Kane and Randy Orton. I only remember it because Kane won by choke slamming Randy Orton off the top rope, which I thought was a great spot. But it was one of those, I was hanging out with some friends, and we were watching it, and that match started. And I remember because a couple of us kind of looked at it. I think this was, I don't remember if I was in the military or if it was right after, because it was some of my old Navy buddies. But we were kind of joking. We're like, I don't remember them booking this match. Like, does anyone remember the build for this? Where did this match come from? And none of us could remember. And that's kind of what this is. This could have been that, but this has had phenomenal build. It's believable. I want to see LA Knight get his hands on AJ Styles. So the fact that what feels like the throwaway match still has me invested is just how good this card is.
I think that's going to be one of the better matches, to be honest.
You know what? I agree. AJ Styles, he's like Gunther. AJ Styles is one of those guys who could have a good match with a broom handle.
Right. And I think he's at the point in his career where I don't see him getting another world title, but I think he's going to be in these high-profile matches just to elevate, the future stars.
Yeah, he's going to fill that. He's going to fill that gap. You've mentioned it before when you talked about guys like like Danucci and Dave Yohanna, some of those guys who kind of became the torch passers, at the end, and how you used to joke where you would get mad when people would call them jobbers because that's all they remembered was them losing. And it's like, no, that was way at the end there.
That was when they were 50 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I think AJ Styles, which Punk mentioned, he name dropped AJ Styles, where he said AJ Styles is older than me, and look at how he's still moving, Right.
Yeah, those guys, they're on the other side of 45, I think, both of them.
Yeah, well, and that's something I think, to go back to what we were talking about with Punk, is I'm surprised I missed it, because I actually made a note to want to talk about it, was when he talked about his injury, where he was comparing his two tricep injuries. He said when he hurt his tricep in AEW, no one called him, no one talked to him. Like, there was a point where he's like, do I even still work here? Like, no one's returning my calls. I haven't gotten any paperwork.
Didn't he have to book his own surgery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he had to arrange his own therapy. I mean, I don't know if it was his own surgery, but I do remember him saying he had to arrange his own physical therapy.
Okay.
And he had talked about like how the company just kind of hung him out to dry, and now here he tears the other tricep. And he even said, he's like, best doctors, they immediately took care of me. He even said, he's like, I'm way farther along than I should be because of how good the company's been treating me with this injury. It showed. It was night and day, the professional, the big league versus the amateur hour bullshit.
Right.
And I'll tell you, anybody that's ever torn a muscle before, when Punk talked about where he poked his finger and he felt the hole, and he could tell the tricep wasn't connected to the bone. That I graded my.
That hurt just listening to that.
I've torn enough muscles in my life to know what he's talking about, and that is not a feeling when you stick your finger and you feel a gap, and you're like, well, there should be something there, and you can tell it's not there. That is the worst feeling in the world. So yeah, grate my teeth on that one. Thanks, Punk. Brought back some wonderful memories. But then we go on to there's another tag match booked for Sunday. This has been an ongoing kind of a B feud, never really mainstream focus, but it's Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits against the recently formed Final Testament, which is Karrion Kross and the returning Authors of Pain.
Yeah.
Which Karrion Kross, I'm glad to see they're finally doing something with him. They kind of dropped the ball for a little while. I mean, remember when they called him up from NXT, dressed him like a gladiator, and then he lost his debut match on Raw to Jeff Hardy in 3 minutes? Like, I'm glad they fixed that.
Yeah.
And we have a visitor, Benny.
Run in.
For those that won't see the video, my frequent collaborator in the background here has decided she wants to be on camera again.
One thing I do not get is why don't they use Paul Ellering? I mean, he's pretty much silent all the time. What? I mean, the guy's an iconic figure in professional wrestling. Why don't they draw on that?
It's funny. I get he's there because he was the author of Pain's manager. I mean, but really, Karrion Kross is one of the best talkers in the business as far as the guys that he comes off believable. He's angry. And if you ever get a chance, Benny, and our listeners at home, go find him on YouTube. He's got a couple videos in the gym where he's goofing off. He does the best Jesse Ventura impression I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, I heard that. Holy crap. That is great. Yes.
You close your eyes, you can't tell that it's someone else.
Yes,
like,
very,
absolutely
very
great stuff. But really, Paul Ellering is... I don't want to say this because he's such a legend, but they don't need him. They have a talker. They have the Scarlet, who's, obviously just almost unfair that human beings can look like that. And then Paul Ellering is he's the elder statesman, but he's Paul Heyman without talking. Like, he just kind of stands in the background and is the clearly old mentor, but you have to at least give him the mic every once in a while.
Right.
I don't know. Well, it's the same thing with I look at Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. The Street Profits are both good talkers. Bobby Lashley can cut a promo and mean it. Good for BFAB for having not been future endeavored. They kind of found a role for her. But really, of all the matches on this weekend, this is the one I care about the least. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Wasn't this the last one to be added too?
I actually think the tag match between Ray and Santos Escobar, I think that was because I think the Authors of Pain match was either added later in the show or one of those two, because they were both really kind of added the same night on SmackDown. Whichever one happened first. I think Ray's match was the last one added, but I could be wrong. That shows how much we've been paying attention to this one.
Yeah.
And then of course, main event Sunday night, part 2. Rematch from last year, Cody and Roman for the title. This is going to be huge. You and I both are going into this predicting this match is going to be under Bloodline rules. Anything goes. So this is Cody's moment, right?
I really think that I think the goal really is truly to make this, this is the first non-Vince WrestleMania to make it, just make it a landmark WrestleMania that people are going to be talking about for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we gave our predictions. You and I both agreed on the tag match. Let's end it on this one. Does Cody win? Does Cody complete his story, or is he 0 for 2?
I'm calling this the streak versus the story. And it's Roman Reigns is, I think, he'll be 158 days short of Hulk, I think, as of Sunday. So he went like 5 months.
Yeah.
But so what is there more value in the streak or the story? I think if Cody loses, the story is over, and I think they have too much invested in Cody to do that. So my feeling is that somehow The Rock is going to cost Roman the match, and so what the Rock is going to have as ammo is, look, I beat Cody. You couldn't even beat him, even with the deck's totally stacked
Right.
against him. And then Roman's gripe is going to be, man, you cost me the streak. I could have surpassed Hulk Hogan. So you have that like for the future feud. So that's why I'm saying it's going to go that way.
I certainly believe that there is a better chance you have The Rock versus Roman at SummerSlam than you have, say, The Rock versus Cody or any of those. I think I agree with you on this one. I'm picking Cody as well, and I think it's going to be because of something that happens between The Rock and Roman, because that's your next big money draw.
100%.
The Rock and Roman at SummerSlam is probably going to be the next big one.
It's really funny though. Monty called me about an hour before we went on the air, and like we're talking about this and we're arguing. And I said, Mike, this is really cool. Two guys whose combined age is probably 120 are arguing about who's going to win fake wrestling matches. But I mean, that's a good thing though. I mean, it shows how much we're invested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't that go to what you remember last week when we were talking with Renee Koloff when you mentioned how the wrestling fans, there used to be a time when you didn't talk about being a wrestling fan.
Yeah, very clandestine. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember the story you always said when there's little Benny, taking his penny farthings down to the market, and you always said like the first thing you bought was the wrestling magazines. Like,
I was broke for 5 years. I mean, but I had my magazines.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a whole stack of them. I've actually I was reading it a little bit today. I just got my my cauliflower, my newest edition from our friends at the Cauliflower Alley Club. I love reading those magazines.
Very good, very well written.
And lifetime member. So if anybody out there, I recommend looking them up. They're great. Absolutely great. I think and you and I are both members, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, that's great stuff. And so yeah, I mean, we've got a great weekend planned. You and I are going to be on tomorrow. We're going to be with our friend What a Day Joe. We're going to do a WrestleMania prediction show. That'll be Wednesday night on YouTube live on the Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. And then Thursday night, you and I will be on the 30. Again, me and What a Day Joe, co-champions. So I'm sure there'll
you might be starting a streak. You might be one day at 1,200 or 1,316 days.
I stand fast when everybody talks about the Undertaker streak. They ignore that he missed 2 Manias. He didn't win 21 consecutive. He won 21 over 23 years, right? I had the longest win streak in the 30 history, but I missed 2 shows because I had the one I joked that you conned me out of, and then I took a week off for my wife and I, and it was it's funny because like I joke, I'm like, I had the longest streak, and then there's you saying I'm the first one to win 3 times in a row. Like time out. I won 6 times in a row. I just did it over 8 weeks, or 5 times in a row. I did it over 7 weeks, excuse me.
Yeah.
So, it's been great stuff. But yeah, we've got a lot of good things planned. And then of course we get right back into it after Mania season. We'll be right back next week with some great stuff. So obviously you can hear us anywhere podcasts are listened to, and you'll find us later this week twice on the Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. So for the playa himself, Benny Scala, I'm Dan Sebastiano. Have a good night, everyone. And we will see you next time on the ring.